Hi everyone, and welcome to Worth the Calories, a Great British Bake Off podcast. This week we're talking desserts.
Desserts.
Puddings. I have seen a couple of things of the annual. What is a pudding? Everything is a pudding. Yes, that's true. Yes, everything can be considered a pudding. It is both a course and a type of food.
Absolutely. But I would say that dessert somehow sounds more sensual.
Especially when you say it like that.
You can say, hey, come over for dessert. You
come over for pudding.
hey, love, come over for some pudding.
Some pudding. Some Yorkshires. Because yes, pudding is used as a type of food for, every course.
Yeah.
But we also then have taken it almost colloquially as the final course as well.
Growing up, I had pudding. I didn't have dessert.
Oh, interesting.
One doesn't have dessert in Rochdale. One has pudding. I might have had dessert in a restaurant, but certainly I would have pudding at the end of my tea.
But you can also have puddings.
You can.
Yes.
Anyway.
We've been talking about how this is a really good season, really good episodes. I felt this was a bit ordinary, which is possibly good given when I think back on other seasons and they've been annoying.
Yeah.
Not as good.
Yeah, yes, there were sort of three things that are desserts.
Yes.
That were clumped together.
Yes. Yeah, there was nothing on the theme as a generality, and it was just make some stuff. This is this is a filler week. This is, they need to go and get the box to do the thing to finish the season-long arc.
Although, I did think the jelly cakes were a good showstopper.
Well, yes, and I think we said at the time that we quite liked it. Watching it again, I have a couple of thoughts on it. So,
okay.
Started off with cheesecakes.
Yep.
12, I think they needed to make.
Yeah.
Identical cheesecakes of any sort and any flavour, and everyone went for passion fruit.
Yeah, what's with passion fruit? Is passion fruit this year's fashion or something?
Possibly yes, but I think it's a good punchy flavour.
Yeah.
You know when you're having passion fruit, it's there. So in terms of small size with good flavour, it's a good way to go. Whereas orange, you can overdo orange or chocolate or caramel or something. Passion fruit is, and it's a good flavour to have in small portions.
Agree. Yeah, no. It does make sense, but then that makes me think, well, is that the obvious choice? And maybe they should have done something different.
Well, clearly it was the obvious choice because they all went for it. I found it interesting doing 12 identical mini ones.
Yeah.
Because it feels like they're going very much for that sort of professional end, what you would serve in a patisserie or a nice restaurant and so on, rather than a slice of a thing.
Agree.
There is also the difficulty that cheesecake is hard to do and bake properly in some of the time they give.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm not sure they could have done a big New York baked cheesecake because of how long it takes to sort of cool and, they'd have had huge craters.
Exactly. And by the time you are then cooking it, you then have to say, and do us a coulis or a jam or a extra thing just to fill the time.
Yeah, like the creme pat with the
creme
steamy pudding, creme anglaise. That was it.
So, most of them went for passion fruit.
Yeah.
Dave went for citrus. And a bit of citrus in everything. So I wanted to make these. I have not had a chance to make them, but I'm still hoping to this week, and we'll revisit that next week.
Nice.
I like the idea of it being all the citrus flavours. So you get a bit of orange through the cheesecake. There's some lime in, I think the meringues on top have some lime in them. And then there was lemon in his sort of topping. And then he baked a biscuit in the bottom.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite a nice thing. I'm looking forward to trying it as a flavour.
I am looking forward to eating it. No.
I quite like... So the other aspect of this that was interesting, particularly from a baking perspective, as they said, whatever you use in the bottom of this, you have to do from scratch.
Yeah, no bashing up digestives.
No, exactly. So Peter, I think, went for oats with something else, honey and so on, to hold it together, which had a bit of baking, but was a sort of very quick... It's almost like Rice Krispie cake.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
It was a flapjack.
Which is not a bad way to go with the brief, but I liked what Dave was doing, which was push the biscuit batter dough in the bottom of them and then cook it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Hermine was bake a massive biscuit. I think 2 or 3 of them might have been bake a massive biscuit and then bash it up.
Laura definitely did that because we saw her throw it all over the floor as well.
Yes, true. So I can see the approach everyone took, but his is quite smart. I'm really interested to see how it comes out because it would be so easy to bake it too much and it be actually quite a hard base.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be so fun. And at the same time, for it to be too wet because of the wet ingredients on it and not bake. So
that would be my concern. Like, would the bit that's next to the wet ingredients actually become the dry biscuit?
Exactly. So it will be interesting to see how that comes out. I think it was a nice approach, though. I think it was quite smart. I found it interesting that they questioned Hermine's use of the jars for it because that, and maybe this is because we lived in Battersea for a number of years. That feels like a pretty standard thing to do.
Yeah. Have anything in a jar. Have your cocktail in a jar.
Exactly.
Have your pudding in a jar. maybe there was a jar maker in Battersea.
Well, maybe so. I think it is that sort of, I'm going to say hipster. Hipster's not quite the right word. But you know, modern and stylish.
Yes,
it's a way to do it. But I think that was, again, a very smart way to do it, rather than then having to push it out of moulds, which is a scary thought.
I was having palpitations just watching Laura try to push it out of those silicone moulds. And again, they said, tastes amazing. The finish wasn't amazing.
Yeah. But then there was Peter's, which just collapsed. Just something in the baking. He didn't keep it hot enough, didn't bake it well enough, opened the oven too early, something.
They just sank in the middle, didn't they? They didn't look massively appetising, if I'm honest.
And then his curd, I think it was curd he was trying to do on top,
right,
which came out too runny, so he put melted butter in it. Well, then you need to chill it so the butter sets more. You don't add another liquid ingredient to it. There was a fundamental decision making there that
went wrong.
Failed on that. Is his youth showing? I think.
Yeah.
I think now he will go. Not butter, flour.
Yeah,
because that's what it needed. That's what it needed. Just something to give it a little bit more binding.
Agree.
But fine.
Agree. Bless him.
An interesting round.
Yes.
I think, like they said at the end of the show, everyone did about the same on it. Obviously there were ups and downs there, but no one smashed it.
Given how far on we are in the series, that was not a set of polished cheesecakes, was it?
Absolutely. So let's talk polished puddings. Yes, the Sussex pond pudding. I'm not going to do the plosive thing, because plosives are not fun when you listen to a podcast. He says, trying to move away from the microphone. Yeah. Sussex pond pudding. Have you ever had a Sussex pond pudding?
I have not, but I have heard of it before. Okay. So I'm not sure where I'd heard of it before, but right. That is something that I was aware of. As
someone who grew up in Sussex, I don't think I've ever heard of it. But also I don't really like steamed puddings. Yeah. So this is... I think this is another one of those ones that goes back to... It was done in this way because of the time it was made. You steamed puddings because you didn't have an oven at home, or it was expensive to run the oven, whereas putting something in a pot and leaving it for 4 hours while you went to church and visited family in the morning and then came back to it was perfectly viable.
We made steamed puddings at guide camp. My guide leader had a very, very good steamed chocolate cake recipe.
Oh, interesting.
That we used to do over a fire at guide camp.
Nice.
That for me is one of my best steamed puddings.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think I have done it for other things. I feel like a sticky toffee type thing, maybe. Who knows? This didn't go very well.
They didn't have enough time.
They didn't have enough time is the core thing to it, because she kept saying in a couple more hours this would have been really good. Well...
They only had 2.5 hours.
Yeah, you didn't give them a couple of hours to do it in.
And also, in most of the challenges, if you had 2.5 hours... you'd be having to do things for most of it.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine any of them would have thought, oh gosh, we've got to bash this together really quickly and then steam it forever.
And then there was the creme anglaise, which they all seemed to do quite well, because yes, they had loads of time to do it in.
Yeah.
And then we had the shot of them all sat there going, well, it's steaming.
I know, right? And like, the difficulty with the creme anglaise was, we're only going to give you enough ingredients for one shot.
Yeah.
I'm just like, seriously, what was the point of that? I mean, they all just got it right, didn't
It's
they?
a sort of custody, vanilla-y, sugary thing.
Maybe they were hoping for some of them to produce scrambled eggs.
Yes, maybe. But at this stage in the competition,
they shouldn't.
Not likely to
they
happen,
shouldn't,
isn't it? Yeah. So, not a great challenge, I think, on top of how they did. And I think because they all did so poorly.
Yeah.
If one or two of them had turned out something genuinely quite good and had come together, you'd say, okay, some of them just didn't cope because people don't do steamed puddings in the same way anymore. No. So they wouldn't have had the practice, they wouldn't have had the knowledge to do it. But they all did poorly.
Yeah, there was very little to distinguish them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I imagine if they'd all had another hour to steam their puddings more, they'd all have produced a relatively decent steamed pudding. It really was just the cooking time.
Yeah, real shame.
So yeah, it wasn't a good way of differentiating the wheat from the chaff.
But then let's talk about when you have a lot of time to bake it.
It's still not amazing.
How it comes out. This is the next thing then. So you did do this.
I did do this.
You were quite enthusiastic about doing this when you saw it.
I was like, yeah, let's do it. Because the thing is, I don't know that I've ever had a sweet steamed pudding, with a suet crust, but I am a big fan of the steak and kidney pudding.
True.
If we go to a restaurant, there's a steak and kidney pudding on the menu, I will order it.
Nice.
Without fail. And if we go to the fish and chip shops and they have a steak and kidney pudding on the menu, I will probably eschew the greasy fried fish for a nice steak and kidney pudding. So I'm like, okay, let's give this a go. I shan't be doing it again. So, I mean, like, it wasn't that difficult.
Right.
All in. I mean, I found the suet crust. It was interesting because they describe it as a dough rather than a pastry. And you've got to knead it. I found it quite a tough knead.
Oh, interesting.
And I found it quite difficult to know when it was sufficiently kneaded or not. I mean, it was only a minute or two that you were supposed to knead it for. Actually, the consistency did noticeably change as I was kneading it.
That's interesting.
Which was interesting.
And I would imagine that's the reason to knead it, because you can't put it in a blender or a processor because you'd break it down too much.
Yeah.
And you can't just do it with a whisk or something, because you do need to break down the suet. You need to make the suet join as a fat.
Exactly.
In the same way you do with the butter and sugar in an actual cake.
Yeah, so I was wondering if some of the point of the kneading was to almost melt the suet into the flour and stuff a bit. But yeah, it actually did produce something that was rollable at the end.
Oh, interesting.
Of it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we had the challenge that we didn't have the right size pudding bowl.
Yes, that is a challenge.
So the recipe was supposed to be two medium-sized pudding bowls. We had teeny tiny ones.
We have
from something
6 small ones that we used, I think, last year in a challenge, maybe.
Yeah, and I can't even remember what challenge, but yeah. And then you managed to find 2 bigger ones at the supermarket, but they were bigger. Yeah. So I used one big one. And I think the amount of crust we had was not really quite enough for the size. So I lined it. And then I put the very, very complicated filling, which was mash, butter and sugar together. And you put half of the mashed butter and sugar.
Okay, so it's mash.
Well, it says mix. I mashed it all together.
But it wasn't... You know how I do when I'm doing a cake, I use a beater, so I'm getting air in there?
No,
you're not doing that. It's combine.
It's just combining. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all just going to melt. So there's no need for air in there.
Okay.
So it was cubes of butter and sugar. And to be honest, by that point, I just finished kneading. So I was like, I'll just do it with my hands. Nice. So I literally just mashed it together. The lemon was interesting because you concertinaed the lemon, basically.
Okay.
So you put cuts across it from like right to left, almost across it. But not quite, and then you put in between those cuts. You don't go from left to right, so you make a lemon concertina.
Like the potatoes that we had,
like the Hasselback potatoes.
There we go. Yeah. Nice.
Exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, which was interesting because on the show I just thought they were just jamming their lemons in.
Well, that seemed to be the implication.
Anyone cutting their lemon, but the recipe was very clear. You had to concertina your lemon. So I concertinaed my lemon. And then I popped the rest of the sugar and butter mixture on top, and then I put the lid on, which was more dough.
Yeah.
And interesting that the water seal made quite a good seal.
Okay.
And then I made a lid. I mean, I did the whole pleating thing with the baking powder and the foil. There was no way it was going to swell enough to need a pleat, but I did it, you know. And then, I tied it on. We didn't have any strings, so I used some ribbon that we use for tying parcels. It stayed on. And then you just boil it for 2 hours. We don't have a steamer, so I just put it inside a big pan.
Okay.
Put some boiling water in to about halfway up the side, stuck the lid on, started boiling it, replenished the water every 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
And 2 hours later, we had a sauna for a house. And maybe not a sauna, maybe a steam room.
No, I think sauna is
and we had the steamed pudding. And we tipped it out, and it held its shape.
It did hold its shape. Absolutely. There are pictures of it where it didn't collapse like the others did. But then over time you could see that it wasn't solid 100%, exactly. If that makes sense.
And it definitely wasn't flaky. Like Prue was like, I'm looking for flakes. I'm like, there's no flakes in this moist lump of suet.
Like, you would have had to do it for a very long time to make it go dry enough to flake.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. And I mean, and what's going to go dry when it's getting steamed? Maybe my foil wasn't sealed well enough. Maybe too much moisture got in. I don't know.
Maybe, but...
So ultimately, my conclusion is the filling was tasty, but how can you go wrong with butter and sugar and lemon?
Yeah, the filling was, and even because of the consistency of the dough, it was like a sticky toffee pudding with lemon in it. Yeah. Which was quite nice. It was a bit interesting and different.
Yes.
But also, yes.
I mean, the dough itself was not unpleasant with the filling when it was piping hot. But there was no way I wanted to eat much more of it.
No.
So sadly, most of it ended up in our bin because it's not sort of like a cake which you can cut and come back to later.
No, exactly, because it's so liquid. You can't then, once you slice it over, and this is why 6 medium or 2 medium, however many they made, would have been okay for 1 or 2 people. But you couldn't then give a slice to other visitors and so on.
No. I mean, it's the sort of thing where So Debbie, our friend who I talk about on this podcast a lot.
Shout out to Debbie.
Shout out to Debbie. Has had it in a restaurant at a gastro pub, and she said it was amazing.
Okay.
I would be interested to taste it done really, really well.
Right.
Because I don't think I did it really well. I think, done in a very small portion with a thinner suet crust. I could see how it could be tasty.
Okay.
But we shan't ever be eating it again in this house.
No. It's another one of those that seems like a lot of faff.
Yeah. For
not much outcome. Using methods that we don't use for reasons. Because we can just stick stuff in the oven now.
Yeah. Because I'm like, would I steam something else? Probably not for that long. I didn't enjoy getting the house all that steamy.
No.
And I scalded my hand beforehand. So no, I don't think I would. Whereas I would do those steamed buns again. Yes. So I wouldn't do something that needed 2 hours of steaming, but I would use that bamboo steamer and make the Chinese steamed buns again. Yeah,
I think that the steamed buns will go really well for when we have people over in 2021, whenever we're allowed to. Okay, well done. I think I was looking at that going, no, I'm not interested in trying this.
I persevered.
You did it, yeah. And this is why we're a good combo, because I looked at the deep fat thing going, yeah, I could probably do that.
And I'm like, oh God, deep fat, I'm going to burn. Given that I burned myself on steam, look, just think what I could do to myself.
How does air burn you?
Exactly.
Right, and then we come to the jelly-topped showstopper cake.
Something I will never, ever make.
It is a really good challenge.
It was very good.
Really good challenge. I love that there's a baked component. I love that they have to do jelly and do jelly really well to taste good. Because I have no idea how you do jelly to taste good. You buy a pack of that thing, you boil some water and you stick the pack in and stir it till it dissolves.
This concept of making your jelly from gelatin rather than from crystals that are already flavoured. I'm like, what?
So, and when they were slicing it and it was moving, it's like, that is a really interesting texture and substance. I could see it being served that and going, this is quite impressive. And then to couple that with a whole artistic aspect, make it beautiful, and by the time they got to her mains, that was just beautiful.
Absolutely stunning.
Reminiscent of Dave's mango flower decoration earlier in the series. So the thing that's occurred to me watching it again is we didn't actually get much time of them decorating. We got one of Mark injecting it and talking about how it worked and moving a knife through. We got the others using shape knives to do things. I wish we'd gotten more about what the different shapes did and how they're putting it together and combining it. And I don't know whether it was so technical and detailed they weren't able to give an interview, a description of what they're doing, or if they just felt it wasn't interesting enough. But I would have much rather had a lot more of that than some of the other stuff we got.
Do you think, before the show, when they were all preparing what they wanted to do, they got given a detailed explanation and some examples of what it was the show wanted them to do? Because, I mean, that's not something I'd ever heard of.
No, I suspect they might be given examples, but that might be it. Yeah. I think things like finding the tools, you go and find the tools to do what you want to do, and you come back with a description. And maybe they are given pointers when they're coming back with, here's what I designed. Because I imagine everyone designs all 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Going into it.
Yeah.
So...
But yeah, I mean, it was fascinating. And I mean, it really did separate them.
Yes.
I mean, Hermines was outstanding.
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Deserved winner of Star Maker this week. I think she did well in certainly that first round. She came in the middle in the technical. And listening back again to the way they talked about all the things, it sounds like she's won the technical. It sounds like hers was the nicest.
Yeah.
But clearly wasn't. Fine. But then it was stunning at the end.
Absolutely stunning.
Just stood out so well. So well done her.
Yeah.
But yeah, Peter and Mark did not come off well.
No.
And I think you said Peter didn't save himself.
Yeah.
Mark had a problem and failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark's was just shocking on so many levels.
Yeah.
Well, not shocking. That's very mean. But I wouldn't have eaten it.
No, it's the cake aspect that went the most wrong. The jelly aspect was fine.
His jelly looked all right.
Yeah.
It was just clearly too heavy for the cake.
Yes.
And also, both the cake and the mousse, like, seriously, those were bad bakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it looked almost like he was doing a pipe meringue thing, so I don't know exactly what that was. He served it on a board as well.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure was not in the brief.
No.
So it is a shame that it went that way, but again, it's making a decision and doing a thing that let him down, sadly.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those. This is why it seems like such a good challenge, that when you look at them all together, you can say, yes, I can actually see who did well here and who didn't do well.
Yes.
As just an observer, as just a viewer.
Yeah.
Whereas there's other times where they say, oh, that doesn't taste right, the texture's not right on that, and so on. And it's actually hard to sort of grasp what's gone wrong. Yeah. It's hard for them to demonstrate it. You know, they say, oh, it's too much rosewater flavour in here. Well, okay.
Exactly.
So it was good to look at them and be able to go, oh, yes, I can see, whilst the challenge was ambiguous to us at the beginning, by the end you go, oh, yeah, I get it now. And yes, I could now judge a jelly cake to see how good or bad it is.
I thought Laura's was good as well.
Yes.
And I think if she'd put a collar around it to hide the edges of the cake and the mousse,
sort of piping or
something, then I still think Hermine would have won because it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
But I think Laura would have been giving her a run for her money.
She did very well in that opening round.
Yeah. And I mean, she can clearly make things that taste amazing.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, Laura really does seem to be picking it up now, I think.
Yeah.
I think her dabbles with the problems earlier in the series are now setting her to, right, this is how I focus, this is how I get it done.
Yeah.
Peter, not so much, but he's been consistent. Hermine has been consistent all the way through.
Yeah.
And Dave, I think, just bakes good stuff.
Yeah. Very competent.
Yeah. I think at some point he and, obviously possibly Laura a bit on that basis, but might come on stock where Hermine is doing something so beautiful. And they're not.
Yeah.
That's where the differentiation will come. But he did that mango cake tart thing.
So what's your prediction for who's going to be out? Because it's the last. It's the semi-final
and then the final. Yeah. Who's going out?
Out because
I don't think I could call it at this stage. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think there's any one of them who, like in previous years, stands out so much.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one that I go, oh, they are the one to beat. They are the really impressive person. I think they are all very good at what they do, and they're all doing that now. But you can see it being either anything we've said, someone just doesn't decorate well enough, doesn't do the finishing touches well enough, or someone does a decision the wrong way, and their cake is not as good as anyone else's. Do you have any thoughts? Or do you have any feelings on it?
I feel that Hermine will be through.
Okay.
I think that Dave doesn't suffer with the stress that possibly Peter and Laura do sometimes. So I think if it's a matter of holding your nerve to get stuff done, then I think Dave will make it through.
Yeah.
And then it's Laura and Peter. I think if Laura holds it together, I think she's got the edge over Peter. But I worry, especially from the flash forward that they showed, I worry that she will have a bit of a meltdown, and that will set her back.
Yeah.
So
could be. I mean, but it looked like that was the technical.
Yeah.
Which
is virtually meaningless.
Pretty sure technicals don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Certainly late in the competition.
Well, it's a technical where they're all pretty much producing roughly the same output.
Yeah.
Make no difference.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So yes. For me, if you said to me, Catherine, put a tenner down now, my money would be on Peter to go out next.
Oh, interesting.
Next
Okay.
week.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. But I could also see it being something goes wrong for Hermine.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, it's
She's
interesting.
my prediction for winner.
Okay. I think on the last couple of weeks, because she's 1 star, you can see it, really coming into herself and so on.
I really want her to win. That's why she's she's an accountancy student. She's not full of herself. She just does a good job. She's competent. She's friendly.
I love her comment about how you say the sponge name. I can't even remember which sponge name it was.
Genoese.
Oh yeah, and she says, "Oh, you need to say Genoise."
Yeah.
After Laura had said, "Oh, maybe it's Genoese, but I'm from Dagenham, I think," so I don't say it that way. And she's like, "If you're going to speak the language, you speak the language.
You should make an effort.
Or why bother?" And that's all I'm going to say on it. And that's the tea.
Yeah, shade.
Right?
Exactly.
I like her. I like her for that. Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, it would be. I think any of them at this stage can win it. And can go out.
Yeah.
Is some of this for Hermine coming into herself? It's just making me think, because the people who tried things that came off are no longer in the competition, because they also tried things they didn't come off. Is that why she's able to shine now? Because someone else might have done a 2-tier jelly thing that really, really worked.
I think Hermine is very sensible.
Okay.
She excels. With quality, rather than pushing herself out onto a complete limb.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, what she did this week was excellent.
Yeah.
But she clearly was like, I know I can do this. Because even from the beginning, some of her decoration skills were outstanding. Like, which is the one where she did, where they were doing like busts of people. And like the sculpture, the person was not amazing, but the clothing that she put on that person was outstanding.
Did she do Lupita?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Lupita would recognise herself in that.
Okay, it will be really interesting to see. I can't even remember what next week was.
Neither can I.
No.
It will be an exciting surprise.
Exciting, but it looks like it has some drama in there, so it'll be good to see. Great.
Yeah.
We'll see everyone next week. Don't forget to hit us up on Instagram if you want to come and see how our bakes are going as we do attempt stuff, and make sure you use the hashtag #WorthTheCalories to tag us in anything and show us your bakes.
Nice.
See you next week.